Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Welcome to the Awake Minute by Minute podcast, and we're on minute 39. Today we have a special guest with us, Vivek Atray. Vivek, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's 10:45 p.m. in India, and I know that all three of you, are in different parts of the world, so very glad to be here with you, and there's always already good vibrations in the hall.
We're certainly blessed to have you. But for listeners who don't know Vivek, Vivek is a very eminent person in India and now probably the world, to be honest. He's a motivational speaker, he's an influencer, and he's a very eloquent writer, aren't you, Vivekji? How did you get into, firstly, tell us where did you meet Yogananda?
Yeah, that's the key question. I'm glad you asked me that up front. So my wife read the autobiography of a yogi. Her name is Jñāna, and she's a much more advanced devotee than I am. I don't say that just in jest. At times I do, but I mean it very seriously. She started meditating about 4 or 5 years before me. She was handed over the book by a family friend, a senior gentleman, who himself read the book but didn't become a devotee. So he became the channel for her. And she started attending sessions at meditation at our center here in Chandigarh, where we live. And she kept telling me, you should read it, you should do. So I was slow, and I was in the government, and I was busy, but I was not against spiritual thought or action, and I was very happy to read the book, though it took me about a year, I must confess. People who love that book have devoured it in a few days. I couldn't do that. Now I do. I'm reading it every day for the rest of my life, I know. And I loved it, and I started meditating gradually. And that's how I met Yogananda ji. So basically, he came into our lives in about, her life, I think in 2001 or 2, and mine in about 2005 or 6.
Wow. Vivek is very humble. You know, he gives the honor to his wife, and also usually when we have guests like Vivek, we usually spend the whole hour discussing their journey and their influence, you know, Yogananda's influence in their lives. But Vivek told us, no, I want you to stick to your format. I'll just be a small part of your project. And isn't that beautiful?
Yes, no, I have every right to be humble, and I have no reason to be pompous. Please.
Superb.
Please go ahead.
Tell us about your experience of the Awake film.
So, in fact, I like the title of the invite you sent me. It said Awake Vivek. So, that rhymes. And you won't believe that when my wife runs a school for toddlers, and this is relevant to what I'm talking about, so bear with me. So she runs a school for toddlers, and my mother had started it. And in my mother's time, there was a student whose name was actually Awake Verma. Verma is a very common surname in India, as you would know. But awake is an English word, and I was intrigued. I was probably in college, or I just started my career. I asked my mother, I said, you were mentioning this awake. What are the spellings of this guy's name? So, but they were A-W-A-K-E, the spellings of the English word, and the parents just wanted him to be alert and awake all the time.
Wow.
But Vivek, as you know, is a word and a name, or a word which comes a number of times in our guru's teachings, and it means discrimination, not in the negative sense but in the positive sense, between right and wrong, between truth and truth. So good judgment. And having had such a name since I was a baby, of course, I have to live up to it. And it's a longish answer, but my wife, Nina, I ask her in jest at times, we keep laughing about each other. So I say, Nina doesn't mean anything. It is meaningless, this name. So she knows that Vivek has a very deep meaning. She says, a person who has a deep meaning, meaningful name has to live up to that. And that's why he has some distance to cover to reach that goal. That's why. you have a name like that. So that's your target, right? Not that you're born with Vivek. I think I became awake, and this awakening is a continuous process. It's never. We are all imperfect, right? So we are human. We are on this planet to work out some deficiencies and some drawbacks or some tendencies. We all know that through the teachings of the Guru. And we have probably a long way to go. But as you know, we know the aeroplane route is ours, and we are on this aeroplane now. So seatbelts fastened, boarding pass in the pocket, and we can't go back. So I'm on that flight, and I guess all SRF, YSS devotees are, and all devotees of all right paths are probably, but the aeroplane route is exclusive to Kriya Yoga. That's what I heard. So we're very happy. I'm very happy to be here. I think my own life has changed to the extent that I am a little more calm, a little more balanced, a little more able to take a little bit of jolts here and there. The pandemic doesn't worry me, for example. And it might sound very arrogant to say so, because I also lost 6 or 7 friends in the second wave in India, which was terrible. But it doesn't really scare me as much as it scares a lot of people. And it's only because of the Guru. And it's also the calmness which comes from within. As a speaker, as a mentor, as an advisor, as whatever I do, I find that I have this energy from within. And that energy is something which comes from the Guru's teaching. And the Guru's teachings are just like the sun shining on top of us, on us all, and we just have to be receptive to that. So it's a very deep subject, and let's just say that I am very blessed to be there.
And what did you think of the film?
So Awake is a film which I saw at least twice, and maybe thrice as well. And I think it's a very well-made film. I have read literature on Yogananda ji. I have probably seen a video or two which is not made by devotees or people who are his followers. And it's a very different concept and conception. So the way you portray a guru it's a very sensitive matter. And I don't want to give too many details on this, it doesn't sound right, but one of the main people in that film, not on screen, but associated with that film, was introduced to that film by me. And I happen to know him. And I was very happy to introduce him to the film. And I'm very happy that he's an integral part of that. And it's a great film, very, very sensitively made. It has moments of inspiration. It has moments of deep thought. It has our revered, beloved monks from SRF. I've watched it a long time back, so I don't remember if the nuns are there, but definitely the monks of SRF and YSS are visible. And you won't believe it, even I am visible in one of the crowds of devotees who are standing somewhere in Noida Ashram, I believe, in a very cold, on a very cold day. And my friends and devotees noticed me. They said, "Oh, Vivek, you're in that film." So I guess I'm the right guest for your show today.
Was that on the energization sequence?
It could be something. We're just standing. I think we are just waiting for somebody's arrival, and I'm in the front row, luckily. So you'll spot me if you see careful.
Okay, Mike, you have a question?
Yeah. So for me, it's always fascinating to see how people, when they find Guruji, what was kind of the reason that you knew that Guruji was your guru? And I want to give you some context, because in the West, I feel like Guruji's message is so unique. It encompasses the whole spirituality of the East that is usually lacking in the West. And this whole, you go within, you're peaceful, the idea of the chakras, the spiritual eye. This is like, in general, missing when you are in a Western religion. And so from the beginning, there's this whole journey towards like this whole metaphysicality. If you are in India, this isn't really like that, right? Because a lot of teachers, I guess, they come with this, and they have, and also the established religions, they to a part cater to this. But what is it when you met or when you heard of Paramahansa Yogananda? What was it that made you think this is my guru?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think, firstly, I went to the Mother Center 4 times in 4 or 5 times Los Angeles. So the first time or the second time I went with my family, we met a monk who was from Poland. And he said something which is very close to what you said. He said, if you're born in Poland, you don't have such great karma. But if you're born in India, you have great karma. Right. So he says, and you know, I realized by and by that how fortunate anyone is to be Indian. But I think it's really, really, really remarkable for a Western individual to be drawn to the teachings. And it shows the power of the teachings of Yogananda. And it shows the kind of caliber that he had, not only as a spiritual guru, as a Jagat Guru, as we say, a world guru, but also as a communicator. Now, let's look at this part of his philosophy, his life. I mean, being great and being spiritual is one thing, but to be able to expound that truth in such a manner, not only in writing, but in speaking, his talks, I mean, those pictures, they're unbelievable in the crowded auditoria. And in New York, I believe there was an incident where he was singing, "Oh God, beautiful," for hours, and the whole hall was going on and on and on. I mean, that magnetism, coupled with that worldly sense of communication, which could be, which is unparalleled. And if you read the autobiography of a yogi, I mean, as a writer, as purely as a writer, not as a devotee, if I read that book, I start thinking like a writer, because there is so many things, there are so many expressions which are unique. So I think for me, Yogananda ji is not only a great guru, but he's also a very practical guru. So people are drawn from India, from the West, from all parts of the world, because they relate to him. And he's also a very lenient guru. He's a loving guru, right? He's a prema avatar. So he's so loving that he's giving us that love, and that he accommodates us. He has prayers like, "Naughty or good, I am thy child." I mean, no path, no guru will give a prayer like that to anyone. "Naughty or good, I am thy child. Guide me, bless me, protect me," something like that. The thing is that he is a guru who is totally appropriate for this world at this moment and going forward, because he's a modern guru. His teachings are modern enough for people to relate to, and anyone who has an inclination and finds him, there may be millions who have the inclination but have not yet found him. We know that, and they will. And the last sentence of the autobiography of a yogi says it. So millions will come on this path. But the thing is that we are lucky. I am lucky to be born in India. You're right. In India, you find it easier to do this, to bow, to be reverential towards the elders. It's not that like that everywhere in the world. But if a Westerner is drawn to Yogananda, it is because of the pull of Yogananda and because of the good karma of the Westerner, and the inclination, and the intent, and the effort. And if anybody is becoming a monastic in India or in the US or anywhere in the world, I've even been to Nuremberg in the ashram where the nuns are. And with my wife, we met them. I tell you, I mean, they're exceptional human beings. So I have all praise, and I look up to them.
Vivek, and
I hope I answered your question, Mike. I got a bit devotional in that answer.
Yeah, it was very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely words. I know we're not going to focus this entire minute of Awake on yourself, Vivek, but I did want to just highlight, maybe if you would highlight a few things that maybe you're working on at the moment. I know you say you're a motivational speaker and advisor, mentor. In your own words, maybe what is it you do and where people can find you so that anybody listening can be directed there.
Yeah, we can put any links on, so tell me about those afterwards.
Sure. Yeah. So I am former civil servant. I resigned from the civil services. I became a devotee about 15 years ago or 16 years ago, as I said. And in government service in India, where I was in the Indian Administrative Service, it was difficult at times to pull away from work, to find that peace, and to be regular in practice. But increasingly, I would be drawn towards going for sangams and convocation and other collections, congregations of devotees, and ashrams. And I've been to Dwarahat and Dakshineshwar and Ranchi, of course, and Noida, and the teaching. And whenever something would be happening, a Kriyadita ceremony, I would be there. And Awake, when the film was released, we were so proud to show it to our friends who were not devotees, and they were in the hall, and they all came out, and even I think, someone in the family who's not on the path, and she said something which was very touching to me. And she's not that sort of person who says such devotional kinds of things about God and gurus. So I think it was. It's been my role as a motivational speaker has been made easier by being a devotee. And having resigned from the service, I find more time to meditate and work on my motivational speeches and work. I do bring in subtle hints about spirituality, but people see me more as a former civil servant and as a motivator for the youth. I talk a lot about emotional intelligence, people skills, public speaking skills, networking, success, careers, leadership. And I have lots of videos, lots of people have seen them already, but I do workshops and things like that. But I do have always I'm being a bit immodest here, but I have the knack of bringing in spirituality somehow into my talks. And I do bring in Paramahansa Yogananda and his quotes, or his picture, or the autobiography of a yogi, or the website of YSS, because most of my talks are in India. The only time when I don't is when it's a very officious or official kind of conference, and where it's all something to do with the economy or industry, or where you can't. So I do what I can to make people realize the importance of meditation, mindfulness, and reading books as well, because I'm a writer. So I want children and young people to read more. I talk about that. I have a few TEDx talks in which I talk about that. But I do bring in spirituality in subtle ways. So what I do is basically to help people feel a little more cheerful than they were before they met me, hopefully. And I write on the same subject. So I'm also, what I realized later is I'm also a motivational writer. So I've written many, many pieces during the pandemic, which are uplifting. And so I think I have been writing a bit for also on the Guru, and it's been published in newspapers as well. And I have helped the organization with some literature on the Guru as well, and especially the 75th anniversary of the autobiography of a yogi, something like that as well. So this is what I do. I write, I speak, I travel, I mentor, I advise, and I enjoy myself.
Very nice. Very nice. Let us move to the minute in question now. So the minute talks, I'll just do a run through. The minute starts with Mas Vidal, and he's talking really about the lessons and what the lessons gave to the people of America, and the qualities that people needed and aspired to attain. And then we have this very abrupt, pretty out of place actually, video of Yogananda talking about sleep, and there's some pretty ancient footage of that, and we'll talk about that in some detail. So let's start firstly with what Mas Vidal says, and he starts with everything was covered in the lessons, from how to achieve success in our lives, magnetizing or attracting your soulmate, creating abundance, how to create harmony with others, and how to find happiness. And it's funny, we asked Vivek to join this talk, and it wasn't planned, but I've noticed a lot of his talks are based on all of those subjects, as he's just summarized there. So that's no coincidence. Obviously, it's divine, what's the word? Divine harmony. So it's lovely when that happens. But let's start with the lessons. So SRF and YSS lessons. Why should people who haven't signed up, Chris, why should people sign up to SRF lessons?
I can only speak to my personal experience when it comes to this. Back in 2015, I found myself really unhappy, realizing, I've got to find truth in my life and joy and happiness. And my journey then took me towards Yogananda and through a series of synchronicities, and it was lovely. Read the book, signed up basically the next day to the lesson, and started going to the SRF London Centre. All I can say is that with the lessons, it was like coming out of the Sahara Desert, desperately thirsty, drinking the most thirst-quenching drink that you could possibly imagine. There was just, I think there's so much wisdom in there, and wisdom is really missing from a lot of, the world in general. I find, from the world that I lived in, possibly is a better way to put it. So for me, it was just, every page, every word was, thirst quenching for me. And I think if anybody's looking for that in their lives, to have that influence coming through the teachings, it's there. It's available to you. And
Mike, what benefits have you? I know you're a long time lesson student, since birth probably, seeing as your SRF family, but what are the benefits of the lessons and studying them properly?
Oh my God. I mean, they're probably the most wisdom-filled text I've ever read in my life, those lessons. And not only is that wisdom there, it's also written in a way that is easily consumed. And consumed, there's wisdom on many different levels. Like when you read the lesson for the first time, I usually get a few messages out of it, and then when I read it again slowly, I find little things that I didn't see were there before. Happens to me so many times. Also, I often get those instant responses. I have a question that I'm dealing with. I just read one paragraph in the lessons, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is this. Oh yeah. And so I wouldn't really know what to do, because how to live my life without them. Even though having read them, I constantly need to go back and read more, because I don't think I memorized even 1% of them. I memorized some of the stories, and I memorized some of the things that right now I find important in my life and I'm working on. But then especially with the new lessons, everything changed again. Like I started reading them again, and they're organized in a different way. And sometimes you hear things again that you heard before, but sometimes you go like, oh, this wasn't there before. This is fantastic. I love this. So I would strongly encourage people reading the lessons. And for me, I wouldn't know how to live my life without them.
I think Vivek summarized it nicely before this call. He said, he never finishes reading the autobiography of a yogi. It reads it every day, and it will continue. You can never glean more. Sorry, enough. It's just an ongoing journey. But Vivek, let me ask you a more difficult question than I asked these two, Chris and Mike. For people that say, you know, Yogananda's got a lot of material in public, i.e. the autobiography of a yogi, the second coming of Christ, the God Talks with Arjuna, you know, these are colossal works, and they have the lessons in them, you know, the messages are in there. Why do I need to sign up for the lessons when he's got all this body of work, more than most other gurus combined?
Yeah, I think the answer is very obvious, and I'm really very inspired by what Chris and Mike said. I totally agree with them. And that minute which you mentioned, and that very important part about the lessons in the film, the lessons are, I mean, the guru said the teachings will be the guru. In a way, the lessons are the guru, because they are brought out in a manner which is cogent, coherent, eloquent. They are systematic. They deal with a particular topic at a time. And as Mike said, you read them and then you have to read them again. But you do understand what the guru is trying to talk about. And it's like all this literature, like you asked me, I mean, is important to read. And each page of the guru's writings, whether it's God Talks with Arjuna or the autobiography or any literature that he's got or that we have to read, is inspiring and it is relevant. And like it was said, I mean, when you pick it up, and many devotees talk about this, you pick up a book and open a page, and it is that part of the book which you need to read that day. You feel as if this is meant for me today. And sometimes you hear a monk talking and you feel that he spoke these words for me. Everybody feels that way. So the guru talks to you through his writings and teachings. And I think the lessons are important, extremely important, because they are the highway to the infinite. I mean, if the airplane route is the Kriya Yoga route, then the lessons are basically, they are the fuel. I mean, you have to read them and implement them. They tell you the techniques, they tell you how to live, they tell you how to balance your life. And if you remember, I'm a public speaker, so I must mention this. One of the topics covered in the lessons was stage fright. I mean, stage fright in a lesson related to spirituality. And I was like, in the older ones, I haven't reached the part in these ones yet where stage fright is, although I'm on the 18th one, which is the last one of the main ones. And then we had the supplementaries. But stage fright, so they are comprehensive, and yet they are not that elaborate that you'll take years to finish them. So one reading would probably take a normal person a year max, because they come during a few months and whatever, and you should be able to read them in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, and reread them, hopefully, if you're inspired enough, or read that lesson which you need. I think the lessons are extremely important. They also become a kind of, it is a kind of systematic thing to do for everybody. So each person who is reading the
we've lost Vivek there, but in reference to the lessons, from my perspective, it's also good because they have the techniques. The techniques are there, and there are some techniques in the public works, but not to that level of depth, and not the higher techniques, obviously, that are available. And in this, when Master Vidal is talking about this, we have about 5 or 6 different sequences. And for example, sequences of images. One of the images is Yogoda correspondence course, and then we have this lovely picture of Guruji with his wavy hair flowing down, and a picture of Mother Center from up above, and it's entitled Yogoda Correspondence Course, the highest technique of concentration, meditation, and spiritualization of the body, by Swami Yogananda, AB, eminent East Indian educator metaphysician, psychologist. And then he talks about then there's just founder of all the ashrams and the centers around the USA. So that was like the front cover. So for people that don't know, now we have a very colorful magazine type edition of the lessons. They're called the new lessons. And interestingly, in India, the YSS, the old lessons were different, slightly different to the American or the Western lessons. For example, I was very surprised when one of my Indian friends showed me his lesson, and it had had some Sanskrit in it, and it had some descriptions of some of our mantras that we obviously know about in India. And I was like, oh wow, this is not in the Western lessons. Vivek, perhaps you want to finish that line of thought that you had before you cut out. But can you comment on that element that I just talked about? But I know the new lessons aren't different, but the old ones, slightly difference between the YSS and the SRF editions.
Yeah, I've been a civil servant. Am I clearly audible?
Yes, you are now, yes.
Okay, thank you. See, I've been a civil servant, and I think I will use my understanding of governance for this one. So what happens is that we use our sensibilities to talk about a particular thing in front of a particular audience. And when your mother-in-law is present, you won't say certain things, right? and when a young child of 12 years old is present, you won't say certain things. So I think it is very apt to edit lessons for particular geographies and cultures as well. And I'm perfectly in sync with what happened there, and why not? So, and it was also a time when these earlier lessons came out, which was very early in India's independent history, let's say, and the understanding of the world was not as comprehensive in India, and perhaps the understanding of India in the world was not as comprehensive. Today, everybody knows what's happening. If potentially, you know what's happening on a street in Glasgow at the moment. So it's very simple for the world to understand the other parts of the world now, whereas at that time it was not so simple. And it is good to, it was right of the organizations to edit them accordingly. And I think the lessons did very well. The number of students were very small at that time, initially, I believe. And one of the monks was saying in a lecture of YSS that we could count them or we memorized some of the lesson numbers right in the beginning. But today, I mean, it's all grown and the work has grown. I believe in South America, it is multiplying at a rate of knots. And Chris would know more about that. But the point is that we are in an era of electronics. We are in an era of the internet, and why not utilize it for the better? I think it's good to go with the times as well.
Yes. So let's go into what Masvidal said. So he talked about things like success, external success. Let's split what he said into a discussion. So let's talk about material success, mental success, and spiritual success. Vivek, guide us on how Guruji can help us with, I know you also mentioned it, like, for example, public speaking, but in other ways, material success. How can the lessons help us in that endeavor?
Well, it's a tough one, but I'm going to take it up because I am the author of a book called Finding Success Within. And we know that one of the books of SRF is Finding the Joy Within by Dayamata. When I titled it, believe it or not, I had I hadn't thought of that title. But when I did title it, I realized it's so similar. And mental success, material success, spiritual success, ultimately, what is the goal of life? It comes into play. And I think the lessons tell us very clearly that the goal of life is to find God. And the goal of life is to find happiness and bliss and joy. So if I'm eating what we call in India pani puri or golgappa, or what when we're eating in the West, a brownie with chocolate sauce and vanilla ice cream on top. I mean, we are ultimately searching for happiness. And where are we searching it? And the Guru says it so clearly, we're searching it in externals. researching it in a new car or a new gadget or something, or a new jacket, but we are, or in a relationship or whatever, but ultimately we have to find it within. Mental success, you mentioned, I think that's a key. The mind is the key, and the battle of life is fought in the mind. Paramahansa Yogananda has clearly said the Kurukshetra is within us. The Kauravas and Pandavas are within us. The bad tendencies, the good tendencies are within us. The mental battle is the battle of good over evil within us. And the restlessness is one aspect of evil which is within us in this era more than any other era. I talk on this, I write on this a lot. Artificial intelligence versus the human experience. So can we switch off from all kinds of forces and withdraw within and become more mentally stable and calm? That is mental success. And be harmonious in our relationship with others. Like you mentioned, harmony. Material success is also happiness. And ultimately, I talk about this a lot, so I'm a little more excited about this question, I guess. Money, power, and fame is money, power, and fame are ostensibly the goals of careers, but they don't work in giving happiness. And I'm sorry to mention this name, but I think he's a good example. I think Donald Trump exemplified somebody who was the most powerful man in the world and never looked happy, and never looks happy, and never smiles. So nothing to do with power, nothing to do with money, nothing to do with fame. Material success is about conquering your demons and finding that peace within. And ultimately, then that leads to spiritual success, which is peace within, and which is joy within, and which is connecting to your, I mean, it's not for me to say, you know it.
Very, very well said. Chris, you've got the unfortunate position. You're going to have to follow Vivek's response. Tell us about your experience of the lessons in those triune success factors.
You know, coincidentally, I'm reading the lesson on magnetism when it comes to, you know, material success, spiritual success, so on. But don't think that I'm going to be able to give you a full read. Nor would I, obviously.
No, we can't. Yes,
I simply can't. But no, you know, Yogananda does go into some practical, you know, separation of the multitude of success, you know, and how we can find success in life. And I think he sort of subtly suggests the more wise one to follow would be the spiritual success, because there within everything will be given to you. And I suppose Jesus talks about that as well, doesn't he? To follow the spiritual path and the material path, and everything else will be given to you. Also, something that kind of stuck with me in some of the lessons, I can't remember which one, was that you know, one day you might think as a child that you really want a certain toy. You must have that toy, and that toy is everything to you, or whatever it might be. But as you grow in age, you then discard those desires. And I think Yogananda talks about that in a similar sense, that sure, you're going to have many desires in life, whether it be material or what have you. But in time, as your spirit grows, you'll look to discard those. So try to prioritize your time and investment in your desires for God and for spiritual growth that way. So that's kind of my take on it through the lessons and what I've picked up.
Yes, the Bible section you're probably thinking of is "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you." Mike, does that resonate with you? I know in California it's the epitome of materialism.
Yes, of course.
You're there as a
funny,
Mike.
Yeah. Funny enough, I had just read the lesson on business success. I think it was 42 or something, and it the message in there was a lot of it. What Vivek said earlier, that you have to basically, if you want to have success for money or success for God, the underlying principle is similar. Like you have to put the determination in. You have to create the single-minded thought that you actually want to achieve something. And I find that part is also challenging. You know, you turn your mind into this kind of machine that you control, that creates this enormous willpower that then manifests things in your life. And then what you manifest in your life is then the next question. And of course, it is more beneficial to manifest spiritual goals than to manifest, I don't know, power or money, even though at least money to an extent is useful. I guess after a certain point, it uses its usefulness. But like contact with God is much more valuable than all of those. So that's kind of something that Guruji never misses to point out when he tells you how to be successful in life, that this is not the goal in this life.
There is the story that it's probably been told one or two times, but Guruji was saying, look, you know, if money was a goal, I can manifest money, and he went and did a few investments, and I think it was in property, and turned out he was quite right in his speculation, and he was able to show that money could be made. But it was only after he went internally, you know, he went inside, as the story goes, to really dig out the knowledge of exactly how he could invest to get the returns. So things like that. So I suppose if you want to use your power for that, you can, but I think what Yogananda was simply saying was it's somewhat immaterial compared to the gains that you can have through focusing on spiritual success as well. But,
yes, indeed. There's 4 or 5 other like newspaper articles that are shown on this minute. I'll just read out some of those headlines. Some of them, one of them is Guruji in the standard pose, as I have behind me, and it says a lesson on highest super realization, and that's like a lesson addressed to a student, a letter addressed to a student, and it's published in a article, it would appear, and it's saying, I'm going to give you one of the greatest super technique of realization, exactly as given by my great master, Swami Sri Yukteswarji of India, and then it goes on. So that's quite a nice article. Then another one is Guruji with a whole host of Westerners, but all of them dressed in Indian robes and other things, and turbans, which is another famous shot. And it's entitled Yogananda brings secret of youth. Which is a nice one. And then there is another one, which Guruji with his long flowing hair, and it says the power within us all. And there's a nice article there, one of his poems, etc. as well. And it's about his free lectures that he used to give in different parts of USA. And then there's another one which is it's an advanced course, Swami Yogananda AB, an advanced course on practical metaphysics. And there's things like the divine will, the 5 pranas, so very complex topics, as it were. So yeah, these are nice little articles. The one I noticed in the corner that no one would have noticed was the newest road to happiness by Swami Yogananda Giri, constructed by Swami Yogananda Giri, which is quite a nice article that no doubt he would have coined to attract more people to his lectures and things like that, which he was a master of, wasn't he? Master of marketing and advertising. Vivek, have you gleaned any lessons from his techniques in that space?
Yeah, it's a wonderful remark that you make. Actually, he was, and if you, I mentioned communication, but you also must realize how, each speech of his, each talk, each word that he said was in subtle ways, but not so subtle ways, directed at telling people that you better get busy with weeding the garden of your life and finding God. And he was marketing God, wasn't he? And of course, his teachings were the super highway to that ultimate goal. And therefore, he said, come to my teachings for finding that. But he didn't say it in so many words. His marketing was very upmarket, if I can say so, and very modern and very subtle and very and even today. And me being, I was in public relations for quite a while in government as well. When I joined, I must say that I told somebody that why don't we promote, the autobiography and this and that, and let's do more, let's do this, let's do that. And they said, no, our way is to let people, there is a saying in Urdu and Hindi, and I'm going to say it and then translate it as best as I can. It is that ishq aur mushk chupaye nahi chupte, which means love and fragrance cannot be hidden. You try to hide them, you can't hide them. And it's a very powerful saying, because the fragrance of the Guru's teachings, it cannot be hidden. So it'll percolate, it'll reach, it'll permeate the souls of people as the prayer goes as well. So I think it's something which is so rich and so fragrant that doesn't really need marketing. But yes, I've learned a lot from him. I continue to learn from him. He's with me all the time whenever I open my eyes to him. And he's of course there. And it's us we who need to improve our knowing, as he says. That's important.
Interesting. One of our minute 7, which is about Lahiri Mahashaya. It's the talk. The minute is the podcast episode is entitled "The Fragrance of Flowers Cannot Be Suppressed," which is coincidentally quite similar to how you described that, the translation.
My intuition is improving.
Yours and ours, perhaps, foreseeing the future.
Yes,
interviews.
everybody.
Yes. In that respect, let's talk about harmony with others, because that's insinuated in some of what Mas Vidal is talking about, and finding a soul and attracting a soulmate, and pure or true friendship. That's also talked about in the lessons. Mike, do you want to provide some of your experience and how that's helped you?
So Guruji, he talks about this in different ways, right? Like, I feel like when he says like attracting a soulmate, this is more like a marketing term that he put out there that of course captures all the Americans at the time that are single or something and are looking for a way to find somebody. And this is true. Like he talks about like Vivek just said, like weeding out the garden of your mind and freeing up, removing those tendencies that actually keep you from having those things that you want. The other thing that he also mentions is that we reconnect with people who we've already met in past lives, past friends, and that they, when we will meet them for the first time, we will instantly, on a soul level, recognize them, and it will be easier for us to connect with them because we have made the connection already in the past, so we don't have to go through all this again. And yeah, I've had this many times in my life, and I'm guessing you guys as well. And sometimes you just have someone and you feel like we're on the same wavelength, and that's probably a reason for that.
Chris?
Yeah, I think Yogananda even takes it a step further, doesn't he, to say that it's quite a literal thing. You might recognize somebody's facial features, the way they talk, even the way they walk. And when I was, I think that the idea there is that this carries on from previous lives and these mannerisms. When I was coincidentally again reading the lesson on this, it's one of the early lessons. I want to say 9, but I don't think it is quite right. But it's early on. It's a personal story, but I met my now fiance, and I was so giddy with excitement because I felt intuitively at the time like I had known her for a long time. On the first day we met, I wanted to show her the lesson because I wanted to kind of try to communicate what it is that I was feeling. and she had felt the same way. So it turned out it worked. It worked all right so far. It was a bit risky, I think, somebody you just met. But I think there are many occasions really in life where it could be that there are people who you don't often see or keep in touch with, but when you do then meet up again, it's just, there's a depth of knowing each other there that goes beyond just this life. So it is a beautiful thing, really. And if you think about it, if you're kind of pairing up with people who you've known before, that's something magical, isn't it? There's like little teamwork in there. You're working together, and Yogananda talks about it in a way. You got to identify this, and you have to really try to nurture those relationships so that you really have divine friendship and divine love for one another that goes beyond family, that goes with the friends, goes to your co-workers and associates and your nation and beyond the nation. I think that's really the goal, is to try to build that divine love and friendship over lifetimes and perfect that. I think he talks about really perfecting that. So it's a wonderful, again, practical lesson that I think everybody, no matter who you speak to, spiritual or not, can identify with that.
So certainly it makes the journey all the more enriching if you can carry on from perhaps where you left off previously, rather than starting completely afresh, because we all need that little boost sometimes. Vivek, what is your experience of this? Did you meet your partner? Was there a nice story there, perhaps?
Yeah, so we met when we were very, very young, and we were teenagers in college. It was the American way, wasn't it, at that time? Probably 19, and she was 18, and well, we are devotees, so it was turning out right. So the Guru knew us, and we didn't know him. It was something that, but we do feel that way with our daughters now, and as you know, I mean, we are Kriya Bans, which is basically we are initiated, and you know that, but some of the audience might not. So we are initiated into Kriya Diksha, and we follow Kriya. So Kriya Bans and their families, and then those who are born in those families, souls who are obviously already on the path in some time, on the spiritual path of progress. So we feel very strongly about who we have in our lives and why they're there. And the Guru put it so beautifully. I love these lines. He said, friends once more to be. And that is something which is so beautiful. Friends once more to be, which is a very magical sentence, if you look at it. And in the scriptures it says that, and even Brother Sivananda, I remember, I wonder if I should mention him, but in a talk at the convocation, he said, the Guru said that each and every person on this planet has been related to you in some way in previous lives. Wow. Each and every person. And that's why when you meet someone, or those who come in your life at least, and when you meet someone, you somehow have some connection with them, and they've been connected. So there is a reason for everything, and friendships as well. And yes, there is a bonding in this hall at the moment, and we have been on this path for a long time, we've been struggling, but here we are, finally, or not finally, but semi-finally.
Very nice. And I should say the lessons, for those who are interested in signing up for the lessons, when you sign up for lessons, you're signing up to be a lesson student. You're not signing up to commit your life to Yogananda or to this path. It's really committing to treating the lessons and studying them with sincerity, confidentially. Not you're promising not to reveal them to everyone, all those kind of simple level of commitments. So don't think it's this huge commitment, because it's not. The next level, as Vivek just told us about, which is where you can become a Kriya Ban, which is an initiating Kriya Yoga, which is the highest technique of God realization. That is where the big commitment comes, and that we can talk about in another talk, another podcast perhaps. But yeah, I just thought I'd make that distinction. Before we let's move on to the next section. So the next section talks about, well, it just gives a very old footage of Paramahansa Yogananda, and I tried to find on the internet and through other biographies more information about this, and I couldn't. And I'm going to play the whole clip of this, but before I do, all I found out was that I think it belongs to the ITN archive, and ITN is like a UK news broadcaster, or was, and so yeah, it's I think it says that this talk was given in 1936 in London, or was recorded. So perhaps when he was coming back from India, he might have recorded this. Does anyone else know any more about this video before I play it?
I do.
No, Vivek?
Not sure.
No, let's play it. So here it is, and I'm going to play, because in the film there's only a 20-second clip, but it's actually a long clip, and this will give you some context into it. So here it is.
Yoga is not magic, sword swallowing, or crystal gazing, but it's the art of super living, as discovered by the ancient sages of India in 1500 BC. If the Western brothers only could learn the methods of the yogis, then they would learn to live 100 years in perfect health, happiness, and great success. You people do not sleep correctly, and allow your sleep to be disturbed by the mental movies of dreams. You subconsciously worry about unpaid bills and troubles. The reason for lying in this posture is to keep the internal organs floating in the tray of the chest and abdomen, free from any pressure. But by closing the eyes and in a relaxation, I can remain asleep several nights. And by opening the eyes and recharging the body, I can keep awake several days. Now I will go into the state of superconscious bliss by lifting my eyes higher in a relaxation and controlling my heartbeat.
So that's a beautiful, more complete version of the clip. Obviously, they didn't have time for all of that in the film. Vivek, why don't you provide some feedback? Is that your sleep asana? Is that how you do your?
You see, when a university professor, Nobel laureate addresses an audience, there are mixed people in that audience. We're trying to imbibe what he says. We try to latch on to each word, but each of us is on a journey. And I do sleep like this at times. I try to sleep like this once in the afternoons when I have a snooze for about 10 minutes, let's say. But it doesn't work all the time. But every word that he says has merit, and he means it, and it's scientific. And there's so much power in the voice as well. So whatever we can, we do our best, and that's what I have learned, and that's what gives me heart that I'm doing my best, or I try to do my best. Yeah, and there's another one which will give us heart, which is that if you don't have the desire to know God, then at least have the desire for God. So this is what the monks say, and I try to follow that.
Yes, indeed. Chris, have you ever tried to stay asleep several nights?
No, I don't think I would actually want to. It's probably the most impractical thing that I've heard Yogananda say. No, I think the idea is behind it that I took was the sheer willpower, right? And I think that's why they included it in this minute, was through sheer will and determination, he can make something as mind-blowing for us as that happened. And there is something to that, right? The level of mastery that Yogananda certainly had and was able to display in moments that I think we'll touch on in the next minute. But no, I've never slept 3 days. I've probably slept, max 12 hours when I was sick one time, but by no means
no. Sickness sleeping doesn't count. When I when I was after my marriage, I got married in India, and many of you will know that Indian weddings, especially in India, are many days, sometimes 5 or 6 days of various festivities long. And my wife had a very, very very tiring 5 or 6 days. She said she didn't sleep for 5 or 6 days, so she did that awake thing. But then the consequence of that was when we went on our honeymoon, we went to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which is in between sort of India and Thailand in the Indian Ocean. It's a very beautiful place. You should check it out. But we went there, and we got to the resort, and she slept for 30-something hours. So I tried to join. I thought, I'm not going to go out and do anything, so I tried to join. So I had a very broken 30 hours sleep, but I still managed to do it. But I don't think it's probably to the same extent that Guruji is talking about. Mike, have you ever tried to stay awake several days?
Yeah, I think I've done this a few times. I guess never with a spiritual motivation on it. It was more like in my 20s, in my college days. But I think with willpower you can do it. You can stay up 1 or 2 days, but then sleep is really going to start catching up with you. So having this complete mastery over sleep, I was never in that kind of position.
I tried to do that during my university exams. I think I tried to do 3 days. I don't know why I did such a thing. I had 2 exams in 3 days, and I tried it, and then I was trying to drink coffee and caffeine tablets, and that is just the worst decision you can ever make. I would highly yeah, just don't do it, especially if you're meditating, because if you're having caffeine, I don't know, but I remember trying to meditate after having a dose of caffeine, a high dose of caffeine, and it was just an insane experience. It wasn't fruitful. It felt like it was a damaging experience. So since uni, actually I've stopped all caffeine, so I don't drink tea or any coffee or anything. So that was the impact of that. But anyway, I digress. That's pretty much the minute. That's virtually everything. Have we missed anything? Is there anything that you'd like to add, Vivek?
No, I think I'm pretty much done with what I had to say, and I think but it's a wonderful conversation. I wish we should do this over coffee sometime. We mentioned coffee.
I'll take a.
You can have what we call, Priyank, if you don't have caffeine, you can have nimbu pani, as we call it here, which is basically lime waters.
Yes.
That's okay. But I do want to add that those who are watching and those who have even passing interest in the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, I think you should think more deeply. I'm not going to cajole you in any way, but I think it's a great example to follow. These teachings you can live the teachings in many ways. All of us, the 4 of us, are living them in some way or the other, trying to. And I also want to say that the lessons are complete in all respects, and they they are the best reading you will ever do. And please think of that.
Absolutely. Chris, any reflections from the minute?
Yes, I mean, this minute is one focusing on the power of will, and there's a lovely picture of Yogananda with his arms crossed, gazing into the distance, and beside him there's a snippet that must have been from a newspaper at the time to say human will is the dynamo of existence. And for those that don't know what dynamo means, by definition, it is a machine for converting mechanical energy into electrical energy, typically by means of rotating coils of copper wire in a magnetic field. Now, there are similarities there to what we do in yoga. I know in Kriya Yoga with the work there with energy in the spine. So by no means do I think that Yogananda chose those words by accident. So yeah, I think the power of will can accomplish great things and should not ever be overlooked. And that's what I've learned through my own experience in this life. And it's just a wonderful lesson. So it's been great that they focused on that in this documentary because it's a real critical element to what Yogananda teaches.
Absolutely. Mike?
No, I just want to thank Vivek for coming on the show. It was great to have him on.
Yes, absolutely. Vivek, we thank you so much. We hope you can join us one day again. And it was an absolute pleasure. It was absolutely
my
honor.
pleasure. It's my pleasure and honor to talk about the Guru and his teachings. I wish I could do this more often, talk only about the Guru and his teachings, but one has to bring in so many aspects of life in normal conversations. But I think this was a beautiful conversation and very inspiring to me. I'm sure it will be to people who are watching as well. And it's great to meet you all. I must say, friends once more to be.
Very well put, Vivek. Jai Guru.
Bye, Chris and Priyank. Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Jai Guru.
Hey, Guru.
Thank you.
Jai Ma.